From the editors of Cook's Illustrated magazine, it's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes, with Adam Reed in the equipment corner and Jack Bishop in the tasting lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Julia shows Chris how to make perfect glazed salmon. Next, Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of tuna. Finally, Bridget uncovers the secrets to ultimate baked sole fillets. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional-level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
And by Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. Diamond Crystal, the gourmet choice. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. By Plum Amazins, diced dried plums from Sunsweet for amazing recipes. By Miracle Grow, the gardener's friend. And by Chateau Saint Michel.
It's Fish Day at America's Test Kitchen. I'm here in Boston at Constitution Seafood with our fish expert Ian Davison, who, yes, is married to our very own Julia Collin-Davison. You have been a great consultant for us. You brought fish in, you've answered our questions. So today we're going to talk about salmon, and we're going to get some straight answers to a sort of murky business. So let's start with wild salmon.
Well, wild salmon comes from west coast of US, usually costs a lot more. They ice it right when they catch it. They fillet it, pin bone it, pack it in styrofoam. Then they express overnight ship it to the East Coast from the West Coast.
So these are all farm raised?
These are all farm-raised Atlantic salmon.
So very simply, just compare wild salmon to farm raised.
In farm-raised, you have a higher fat content, so a little bit more flavor and more moisture. In the wild, it has a different texture, different taste. Also, wild, I don't know where it's been. It has a higher chance for higher levels of PCBs and mercury than the controlled environments of farm-raised salmon.
What's the difference between these four?
This is from Chile. Based on the feed, they add a colorant to give you this bright red. This is from the US. It's grayer in color. That's because of the feed used in the US. While in Canada, you can see the yellow tone, there's a corn feed. I would buy Scotland or Norway. The feeds are a higher quality. They're trying to switch to an all organic feed. A lot higher fat content, so much more flavor, very consistent product.
Your vote is a fresh Scottish salmon.
My vote is farm-raised fresh Scottish salmon.
So finally, tough questions, which you actually gave me honest answers. So now we know how to buy salmon. Let's go into the test kitchen with your significant other, Julia, and figure out how to make a great recipe for glazed salmon.
So glazed salmon, first we're going to focus on the glaze, and the problem is the glaze usually runs off the salmon and pools and burns, and it doesn't really stick. So the solution to that is twofold. The first part is we're going to make a very thick glaze that sticks better, and this is 3 tablespoons of light brown sugar. This is 2 tablespoons of m0n, which is a Japanese wine. That's right. 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, a tablespoon of sherry vinegar, which, you know, is a little out of context in terms of Asian, but it adds a really nice sourness to the glaze. A tablespoon of water, a tablespoon of coarse ground mustard, and then a little cornstarch, of course, which will thicken it. This is a teaspoon of cornstarch, and these are crushed red pepper flakes. This is 1/8 of a teaspoon. And now we're gonna bring this to a simmer, and we're gonna cook it for about a minute to get it really thick. You see it making that transformation where it starts getting really thick. The bubbles aren't so light colored, but they look glossy, and that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
So we're gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna cover to keep this warm while we get our fish ready. And here we have a center cut piece of salmon. The other trick is, if you can, find a whole center cut piece. Now this is somewhere between 1.5 and 2 pounds, and cut your own fillets, because then you'll know they'll be exactly the same thickness, and of course we'll cook at the same rate. If you add a big piece, you know they'll all be exactly the same thickness. Now the other problem of getting the glaze to stick to the salmon is the salmon is obviously pretty slippery. So what we're going to do is make a mixture to make the surface of the salmon just a little tacky. And that's going to consist of a teaspoon of brown sugar, half a teaspoon of kosher salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cornstarch. And that cornstarch is pretty unusual, but again, it makes a sort of tacky consistency. We're just going to put it on the very top of the salmon.
So is there an association of fishmonger wives?
I don't know.
Do you have annual outings?
We have a drinking club.
Well, everybody has drinking clubs.
Exactly. I don't know. I think I should start one.
Yeah, I think you should start one.
All right, and you want to really work it into the surface of the fish. Now, of course, there's salt in that mixture, so we're going to season it with just a little bit of pepper. And if you could, please, we're going to heat up some oil in that skillet. We want that skillet to be smoking hot, which means the oil is smoking, and that's how you know the skillet's hot enough to really get a good sear on a piece of meat. All right, that pan is nice and hot. You can see that oil's just starting to smoke. And now we're going to sear the fish really quickly, about 1 minute aside. And of course, I'm using a non-stick pan for obvious reasons, because we don't want the fish to stick. I'll start my timer. We want to get a nice crust on the flesh side. We tried recipes that didn't get a crust, so you just put it in a low oven to get it nice and tender. And that worked really well for the texture of the fish on the inside.
But you want something on the outside, yeah.
Yeah, you missed that crust. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a quick crust using the hot skillet just for a minute. Flip it over. Oh, nice little crust. We're going to cook it on the second side again for just a minute. I'm going to take the salmon off the heat and put a little glaze right over the top of it. You can see that nice thick glaze really sticks to the salmon, of course, because we did that cornstarch mixture. Oh, doesn't that look good?
It looks fabulous.
We're going to put this into a 300-degree oven so we can cook the fish through so that the center stays good and moist. This is an oven-safe skillet, but if you didn't have an oven-safe nonstick skillet, you could have transferred these to a baking sheet.
Okay. So one of the problems we have with this recipe and many fish recipes is we want browning, but the Maillard reaction, you've heard that term lots of times, which really means browning, is the reaction between amino acids and sugars at temperatures over 300 degrees. Well, we don't have that much time over 300 because fish cooks very quickly, unlike meat. So what do? Well, what we did was start with sugar, and when that hits sort of the wet outside of the fish, it dissolves and breaks down from sucrose to fructose and glucose. Now, fructose at only 200 degrees, not 300, will start to caramelize. So you get caramelization on the outside. It looks like browning. It's similar, but it's different. So you get browning with a fructose, and we solve the problem of how to get great flavor on fish even when you don't cook it that long.
So it's been about 8 minutes since we put that salmon in the oven. Let's take its temperature. 125, which is perfect. And oh, don't they look good?
I think you did a very good job.
And obviously, when you take a hot skillet out of the oven, the handle, although this has a nice wrapper that doesn't make it too hot, you know, a good trick is to lay a towel over it. Lets everyone know. And you don't have to let these rest. You can eat them right away. Oh, that looks good. And look how that glaze really did stick to the top of the fish.
Oh, I love that glaze.
Me too.
That is very good.
I love the contrast of the crust on the outside and that very tender fish on the inside.
So great glazed salmon starts with a glaze, oddly enough. We see m0n, some sherry. We cooked it all down with some sugar. It was nice and thick. 4 center-cut fillets. A little cornstarch and brown sugar on the outside. It heats up to get a nice crust. We finish it off in the oven for 8 or 9 minutes, and there you have it. Very simple recipe, 20 minutes start to finish. Fabulous glazed salmon. I admit to being a schizophrenic tuna taster. I don't know if I want it to taste like chicken or actually taste like it came out of the ocean. Now, some of these brands I've tasted over the years taste like bad cat food. I mean, they really do. They stink. And some of them have no flavor at all. They're nice and meaty, but it could be turkey or chicken. You have no idea what it is. Maybe tofu, I don't know. So we're back to see if we have something new in the world of canned or jarred tuna.
A couple of really interesting new developments in the world of canned tuna.
Oh boy, this is great.
Well, I love it when we do a lot of research and really uncover what's going on. So traditionally, tuna is frozen at sea. The boats are out there for weeks. They cook the fish twice. What they're trying to do is get the highest rate of recovery.
I guess I'm not going out tonight. Oh, man. Oh, come on. Is this cat food? Man.
So as I was saying, Chris, before the cat food interrupted us, most of the brands have traditionally been double cooked. It's very hard to get raw tuna off of the bones and off the skin. So they cook it, then they put it through a machine, and then they cook it again once it's in the can. Well, you can imagine cooking fish once, it takes a lot of moisture out of it. Cooking fish twice, there's no moisture left at all. And so that's why they usually add vegetable broth, water, other things to sort of try to rehydrate the double cooked fish. A couple of new brands out there now are just doing single cooked, and they're not adding any water. They're just tuna, and one brand is tuna and a little salt. And so there's no water in them. So we found that when we drained them and we weighed the amount of tuna versus the amount of water, that even though those brands are more expensive, there was very little liquid in there. So you actually are getting more tuna packed into every can with some of the premium brands. I should also say that there's another super high-end tuna in here that's packed in olive oil. So anything that you're liking? I know there's one thing that you already have decided you don't like.
Have you seen me going back to this one again? I don't think so.
Are you noticing differences among the other three?
This is dry. I mean, you have to put a lot of mayonnaise with that.
Does any of them seem any more moist than others?
This is just much too dry. Both of these, you know, this is a little wetter than this, but again, if you mixed it with something else, I don't know. What was this? If this is our winner, I'm going on sabbatical.
You can take the, that is the winner of our super premium high-end tunas packed in olive oil. That's from Spain.
How long a sabbatical do I get?
How much do you think that jar costs?
Well, I don't care how much it costs because I'm never buying it.
That has actually never been frozen. It's line caught. They poach it in seawater the day it's caught.
Oh, how nice.
And then they put it in that jar with olive oil, and it's $35.
I mean, this actually does taste like fish. So, I mean, if you get to the schizophrenic part, this actually tastes like it swam at some point. These don't have a lot of flavor.
Well, so you want a protein delivery system rather than actually something that
this is too much.
tastes like fish.
I guess I'd like fish, but not that much. Okay, this one was not one of my favorites.
So this is StarKist Selects. So the supermarket brands have tried to come up with sort of premium versions. Just got water. There's no vegetable broth or anything else in there. We actually thought this was better than the regular StarKist.
I'm not doing well here. And these two?
That is the regular StarKist, which was sort of at the bottom of the pack. It's got vegetable broth. You noticed it was moisture, but we felt like it was detracting from the tuna.
And this one?
That is our winner at the supermarket. This is Wild Planet. This is single cooked.
It was pretty good.
It had a sort of meaty, firm texture. I think especially when you started mixing it with mayonnaise, it held up better, and you had nice chunks in your tuna salad. We really felt like it was a good value. There's more tuna in that can because there's no water added, and nice flavor.
Well, the good thing about this is this would last forever because you'd never open it. You'd have one jar and the other four would just stay there forever. So the winner, if you have $35, which seems a bit absurd, was this brand,
Nardin,
which was
yes.
Nardin. And then the second, which I also liked, was Wild Planet. There you have it. Wild Planet comes in at how much money?
That's only $5.
$5. Wild Planet is the winner. It's still Fish Day at the Kitchen. I'm back with Ian, our resident fish expert and fishmonger. And today we're going to talk about sole, about buying sole. So I go into the supermarket, I go to the fish counter, and it says sole, but I'm not really sure it's sole. So what are all the other things they could be selling me, but it ain't sole?
Sole is commonly mislabeled in my industry. There are more than 15 types of varieties of fresh flounder, which are all interchangeable as sole.
So is this because historically they all grouped them together?
Correct.
Or are people just trying to make more money because they can sell sole for more per pound than flounder?
A little bit of both.
Okay, so I go in, it says sole.
It says sole.
I'm not sure if it is. How do I know the difference?
Well, the first way to tell is color. Sole is white, while flounder is very gray. Also, in the flounder, you'll see veining up and down the sides. Almost looks like little hairs. Sole is triangular in shape, while the flounder is very rounded on the edges and oval. Sole is usually sold only between 2 and 8 ounce fillets, so it's much smaller, while the flounder is sold from 4 ounces all the way up to several pounds per fillet.
You said there are a lot of different species of flounder. Are they all going to be this gray or some of them lighter color?
Some are going to be lighter. Here's a flounder. It's a little bit grayer than the sole, but definitely whiter than the fluke.
I assume these are some other fish that people sell as sole. So what do we have here?
Correct. Here we have some dabs. This is our local fluke. This is lemon sole, an actual true sole, and this is a blackback, another type of flounder. Well, you want to buy fresh versus frozen. Frozen has a weird, rubbery-like texture. It's going to act differently in the pan. If you have a nice piece of fish, it's going to look translucent, be nice and firm, and not smell at all.
Okay, time to see if I've learned anything here. So, buying sole, there are 4 things to look for. It's very white color. It doesn't have veins around the side. It's a little bit triangular in shape, not rounded like a flounder is. And also, it might be a little bit smaller. But at the end of the day, fresh is more important than species.
Correct.
So a really fresh piece of flounder, this is a fresh piece of flounder, would be better than a really bad piece of sole.
Correct.
Okay, so now we've uncovered the mysteries of sole. Let's go into the test kitchen with Bridget and figure out how to make a great recipe for baked sole fillets.
Now this is baked sole, and I don't know if you've been to a country club anytime recently and had that lovely piece of fish. It comes, they even put it in a tiny casserole dish. It's got these herbed breadcrumbs on top. It comes basically with its own ocean. It's swimming in tons of water. Everything tastes diluted. So we are going to make baked sole with tons of flavor at every single step. This is 3 tablespoons of minced parsley, of course, tons of green color here, and also 3 tablespoons of minced chives, and a tablespoon of minced tarragon. Now, you can switch out the tarragon if you want something different. A little bit of basil, equal amount, would work perfectly, so would dill. A lot of people like fish with dill. So just stir this up. All right. So we're going to use this in a couple of places. So I'm going to take a tablespoon, just reserve that to the side. And to the rest of this, we're going to add some lemon zest. And just mix this all together. Now, instead of just adding some raw garlic in there, we're actually going to make a garlic butter. So I've got 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I want this butter to melt. So just add in the teaspoon of minced garlic, goes right in. Just stir it all in there. And we're just going to cook this for about a minute, but basically we just want the garlic to get nice and fragrant. So that ought to do it. We're done with the skillet for now, so I'm just going to take it off heat. We've got sole fillets, 6 of them, and each of these weighs about 6 ounces, so that's just the right size for us. Now, if you find that flounder is more available at your supermarket, you can certainly go with flounder. Again, equal amount. So obviously, these fish are incredibly wet, and that's one of the main problems with this dish, is that when you bake it, all that water just stays in there, everything tastes diluted. So, just gonna take some paper towels and pat the fish dry on both sides.
So this is the same as sauteing a piece of meat.
Absolutely.
Same deal.
Absolutely.
You want dry protein.
That's right. Always a good idea. Just want to season this with some salt and pepper on both sides. I always thought fish should come kind of pre-brined, you know, since it's right out of the salt water. Just no luck that way. All right, so that looks good. So now I want to arrange all of these skinned side up. That means the side that the skin was once upon, and you can tell because it usually has a little bit of that colored residue there. So just all of these go up, skinned side up, and I have all the tails facing away from me. It's going to make this much easier to handle. Now, let's start adding some flavor. This is 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. I'm just going to blob this evenly over the fish. It's about a half a teaspoon per fillet. I'm going to spread it all over the fish fillet. There we go. And now you remember the lemon zest and chopped parsley mixture. I'm going to put about a tablespoon over each fillet. So, got tons of flavor, well seasoned. Mustard, it's going to help this herb mixture cling and also give some great flavor. All right, so that looks great. Now we want to introduce some of that garlic butter, about 1.5 teaspoons over each one. Lots of flavor. So we've got a little bit of garlic butter there we're going to leave. Now, this fish has a lot of problems. I've got a lot of problems I can really identify with this fish. One of the problems is it's so thin it overcooks incredibly quickly. And as it overcooks, it becomes really, really fragile. You lift it up to your plate and it falls apart. So what we're going to do is create little fish bundles. Aren't you excited?
How clever.
Yeah, so we're just going to roll this right up. I've got the tail pointing away from me. Nice little tight bundle. So essentially what I've done is created a thicker fillet. All right, so just want to roll this up. So I'm going to put these seam side down right in the baking dish. Just nestle them up nice and tight together. Again, this is going to create basically one large piece of fish, much more difficult for us to overcook them. There we go, all snuggled together. All right, so you could hand me that butter, or actually, why don't you go ahead and pour that right over the top?
I have a spatula some
Of course you may.
Thank you very much.
So we're getting garlic, butter, herbs, all right on the fish.
This is a great recipe, even if you don't like fish.
This is a great recipe, especially if you don't like fish. All right, so now we want to put it in the oven, but before I do, piece of foil, cover it nice and tight. And what this is going to do is help trap the moisture in there. It's going to cook the fish much more evenly. I'm going to put this in the 325 oven for about 25 minutes with the foil on. That way, both the inside and the exterior will be fully cooked through. Now, what you did not see me put on the fish, breadcrumbs. A lot of recipes start with the breadcrumbs, go right on the fish, goes in the oven. Well, that gives the breadcrumbs tons of time to sop up all the moisture in the fish. So what we're going to do is cook it separately. Now, back to the same skillet. Just want to wipe it out, get rid of any of that excess butter and garlic. And we'll go ahead and melt 1 more tablespoon of unsalted butter. Now, oftentimes for recipes like these where we're using breadcrumbs, we'll make our own fresh breadcrumbs. And we tried that, but again, fresh breadcrumbs sop up moisture. And even if we toasted them, they still sop up a lot of moisture. So instead, what we're going to use is panko, Japanese-style breadcrumbs. They're incredibly crispy. But since we're not putting it right on the fish from the very beginning, they're not going to get a great color. So that's why we're cooking them right in the skillet. And this is 2/3 cup. Get them nice and toasty, kind of a golden brown. And that's going to take about 5 to 8 minutes.
Okay.
Just going to transfer this to a small bowl. Now we need to season these crumbs. So, 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt right in there, and some pepper to taste. Now I'm going to let this cool down completely. And after it's cooled down, I'll go ahead and stir in this reserved herb mixture.
Okay.
And that's to kind of reserve the flavor of the herbs. We don't want them to wilt too much. All right, so this is 25 minutes. I'll carefully remove the foil. Et voila, they are still there, but obviously they're not so pretty. You see all this beautiful little juice, and that's a lot of that garlic and butter.
What do you mean they're not pretty? They look great.
They're all right, but we're gonna make them look gorgeous. So first thing I'm gonna do is just baste the fish with that fabulous garlic and butter juice. That looks good. Now, we want to top this with our breadcrumbs, but we're not going to use all of them at this point. We want to reserve 3 tablespoons of the breadcrumbs, and we're going to top it later with that. And we're going to add the remaining right now. What that's going to do is this is going to meld the breadcrumbs with the fish now, but later on we'll get a nice hit of super crispy breadcrumbs right before we serve it.
I have to say, this is a major makeover from the sole fillets I used to cook in a skillet.
Yeah, so these are going to go right back into the oven. Not going to take very long in there, maybe 6 to 10 minutes. And what I'm looking for is the internal temperature of the fish to be about 135. Oh, thank you.
I'm here for you, Bridget.
I can see that. Oh, they look great. Now, let's check to see if they're done. Again, I'm looking for a temperature around 135. Awesome, we are ready to go. A little sprinkle, some fresh crumbs. And we've got a little bit of lemon here.
This is like one of those painted plate deals, you know,
Is that what it
expensive
is?
restaurants. Yeah.
Super tender.
Boy, is that good.
But you see how it held together so nicely?
I like the mustard. Not too much garlic, just a little bit. It's quite good.
Quite good.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So we start with fillets of sole, actually with a little butter, a little garlic, little herbs, roll them up, put them in a casserole, cover them into a 325 oven for 25 minutes. Meanwhile, we toast some panko crumbs in the same skillet, take it out of the oven, crumbs on top, back in for 7 or 8 minutes, and finish with just a final dressing. A fabulous way to prepare baked sole fillets. From America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, another great recipe by Bridget herself. Brilliant job. You can get this recipe and all the recipes this season on our website, americastestkitchentv.com. You can check out our tastings, testings, and watch selected episodes of the show. Also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Excellent job.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel, America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances. For over 50 years, Miracle-Gro products have helped home chefs grow fresh vegetables and herbs. Miracle-Gro soils and plant foods provide the essential nutrients plants need to grow bountiful produce. Gardening tips are available online at miraclegrow.com. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Chateau Saint Michel. Digital wine cellar and pairings can be found online. And by Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Plum Amazins from Sunsweet.